Tailors, and welcome back to another episode. We're officially in season 12, really deep in season 12, and we are shooting again at the luxurious Eka Hotel, where it's home to a beautiful restaurant, beautiful fitness facilities, beautiful massage and spa facilities. So if you're in Eldoret, feel free to pass by Eka Hotel to be able to receive wonderful services. Today, I have again a really, really amazing episode, and I'm honestly even just overwhelmed thinking about it. So, I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves and then I'll talk about their birth story of this episode. So, let's start with you, my dear. Tell us your name.
Hi everyone. Once again, Donna Nyaboke here. Trainee advocate, hoping to be admitted to the bar. Actively and very deeply interested and passionate about human rights, the human condition, and making the world a better place.
Period.
So hi guys, my name is Kalaka Simbili. I am a teacher by profession, but currently actively a PR, communication, and marketing strategist. So anything under the digital space, I'm your guru. Yeah.
Hey, we're gurus. We're gurus over here, and I am your host, Cecilia. I'm a co-host here at Portail, so I'm not the only host here at Portail. Today we are having a really beautiful conversation. Honestly, I think for me this conversation was sparked by my friend Derek. Derek, shout out to you. He was confused about what CBC was because schools just closed. His brother brings a report card, and he's like, "Ulikuwa namba? Akuna namba." There's no longer a sisiju ulikuwa namba gani. You can no longer promise your child ukikuwa number 1, number 4 to 5, I'll give you this. Yeah, it's gone. That's gone. So he's like, what is the merit anymore? What are we talking about? And that took me into a really deep dive as well because in as much as I'm not a parent, I'm a guardian as well, and I hear about CBC and I try to immerse myself in the new education system, but it's been really difficult to go about it. But all I'm hearing in the air is that it's really negative. That it's not something we're supposed to welcome. That it has its faults and flaws, and it's going to produce this horrible generation of non-thinkers. And I said, we'll talk about this. This is fodder for hot deal. Okay. So before we start, let's hear a little bit of what you guys think about CBC, and then I will go into an evolution of how we got here and the evolution of our education system as Kenyans. So let's start with you, Donna.
When I think about CBC, okay, I'm not a parent yet. So for me, CBC wasn't really my business because I'm a firstborn, the 3 of us at home, and my brother was one of the last cohorts in the 844 system.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I didn't really care about CBC. It was none of my business, because it didn't personally affect me. However, post the Mandamano era, as of last year, I started to think about education in this country, what it means to learn, and what it means for our students, for our children to be in school. And so it prompted me to start thinking about what CBC is, what CBC is going for.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I'm not a really big fan.
Yeah.
I'm open to correction, I'm open to conversation about it, but I'm not a really big fan of CBC.
Yes.
We can discuss about
We can
it later
reform it.
on.
We can reform it maybe.
In the episode.
Let's talk to our teacher. Tell us. Tell us what you think.
Okay, I'm a big fan of CBC actually, because CBC is here to train a whole other generation where we will have innovators, we'll have creative thinkers, critical thinkers, we'll have children who can actually get out of school and open their own businesses without actually having to say you have to be a doctor, you have to be an engineer for you to be someone in the society.
Yeah.
And that is why I love CBC. The problem I have with CBC in the country is the fact that the government hasn't really implemented it in the best way possible. And that is why there's a lot of gaps. And if that implementation is not done correctly, then we're going to raise a very, 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 and I repeat, another very dumb generation of children, because these children will lack the discipline that came with it for 4. I think that's the one thing I loved about it for 4. It came with discipline. And CBC, if it's not well implemented, then we're going to have a lot of indisciplined adults in future.
Okay. So I think to properly understand CBC, or currently what is called CBET, CBET, we need to go back. We need to backtrack. We need to bring the common mwananchi. We need to have a history class. So in Kenya, so far we've had 3 education systems, right? And so let's start from post-colonial era with the first one that came about. It was called A levels. I found the name.
Ile wazazi wetu.
Ulikuwa nasikia ati walikuwa na GHC. Walikuwa na GHC. They had GHC. We used to hear of these things. So let's talk about the A levels, how it came about. I think when I was doing my research, this year, props to, like, I have to give our writers and publishing industry in Kenya for doing a really thorough job of educating people, because newspapers have gotten in their bag. The Standard, hello, thank you. Please give me some work. Anyway, so after Kenya attained its independence, we realized that one of the 3 main things that they needed to address was poverty, ignorance, and disease. Those 3 things. So the biggest problems that we need to address. And so when we go to the ignorance sector, they realized that the colonial masters, quote unquote, had segregated the country, where they went to them and the Asians went to elite schools, and the others, the rest of you went to where you got the bare minimum of your education that you could only survive with, which was mostly manual work, where you learned what are they called, receptionist, very low position jobs. That's what you could attain, right? So after that they realized, okay, we need to be able to integrate a new system that understands Kenyan values and history and all of these things, and what we want to actually take from the colonial masters. And they made the A levels system. Now the A level system came with its problems. Now let's talk about the A level system and the problems that it presented, because when I was reading about it, I was like, our parents, they suffered.
Walikipitia sana.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that the A level system failed in that prompted a new system to come about?
I think one of the big things, for those who don't know A level system, ni ile yenye mzazi wako alikuwa anakuambianga 7 4 2 4
Yeah.
4 or 3, yeah.
Ilikuwa nafika form 6 alafu uni.
And from my own research about the A-level system is that it was difficult for people to get into university if they did not go to form 5 and form 6.
Yeah.
And I think the exam craze with education in Kenya began with the A-level system. Because, okay, back then, unajua siku hizi sisi secondary schools na high school ni the same thing.
Yeah.
But for the A-level system, secondary school ilikuwa inafika form 4, and then high school ilikuwa inafika form 6. And the schools that were high school that had the facilities to do form 5 and form 6 were very few. So it became competitive. You finish your O levels at form 4. If you don't pass and pass well, you won't be able to get into form 5 and 6, and you cannot go to university unless you have your A level. So when a form 4 yako, you're out.
And if you can't go to university, you cannot get the top 5 jobs.
Yes.
Lawyer, doctor, engineer. Those ones that our parents have always put on a pedestal.
Okay, when you talk about A levels, for me, A levels zilikuwa elitist. I'll say they were elitist. In that, tukikumbuka stories za shosho zetu, unakana mtu anakwambia shosho yangu alienda Makerere, unashangaa shosho yangu alikuwa fala nini? But you know your grandma is like this smart lady, but she tells you, my father didn't have money at that point, because we're just like from the colonial era, and then kaboom, there is, you have to go to school, and then there were this Makerere, those Julius Nyerere, those schools. So A levels zilikuwa elitist. It was an elitist education system. And the fact walileta it for 4 now, at least tunaona ikakuja ikakuwa free education. So A levels, I'd say disadvantage wise. Yeah, I hope I've said that.
Yeah.
Disadvantage wise, I'll say A levels zilifanya do bring about the toxicity of merit-based learning.
Yeah.
In that, if you cannot perform well, if you're not a doctor, you're not an engineer, then you are no one in the society.
Yeah.
Ndo ulikuwa naenda kwa village, you hear, nani ni engineer?
Wakili and I, ilianzia hapo.
Mwalimu and I,
Yeah.
you see. So it brought about that, and I can say it brought about classism. It led to a lot of, but the social scene,
Yeah.
it brought a lot of segregation,
Yeah.
even among ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'll say it being scrapped off was a good idea.
So being very elitist, it was very geared towards the wealthy in our society. And at the time, who are the wealthy? The ones who had taken over from the political world. So from them, from the colonial world. So they had just taken spaces and grabbed land and all of these things. They're the only ones making it to these famous A-level classes from 5 and from 6, and then to university. So even our universities were very underpopulated. Like 50 people in a year were the ones who are making it into those classes. So it was pretty bad.
Well, I do have an anecdote about that. So I'm an advocate. So I'm hoping I'm a trainee advocate. Yeah. So when I joined KSL, there's a time we had um, a talk about how back in the day when KSL was just starting and the legal profession in the country was still new, there were only 20 people who had been admitted to KSL, and classes were private, and they were learning fine dining habits. You know, how to eat with a fork and a knife, how to yes, eat from the outside going in, how to use your napkin, how to sit, posture, etiquette. Very classist and white, for lack of a better
English
education. Yes, very British.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting because it's difficult to talk about education in Kenya without talking about colonialism in Kenya.
And that would take us into a whole different world. Like, I think we can easily lose ourselves in colonial conversations. But to curb that, let's just talk about the systems that have been put in place post-colonialism. So they saw the need for, I guess the workforce really suffered, because if you only have 50 people, or if you only have 20 people going into KSL, and then only how many would graduate? Not all of them would graduate. Of course, you have like 6 lawyers in the country. And then what? Who is representing the whole country? What is happening? Of course, every other system and every other structure was failing. So they're like, okay, we need a new system that would bring more people into university. So what are we going to do? We're going to cut out the A levels. We're going to remove from 5 and from 6. So secondary and high school, same thing. Same WhatsApp group. Alliance? Nah, now your school in the Bundus. Same energy, you know. Then 844 came. It brought about so much revolution with it. It came with free education and things like that. Let's talk about the free education part of it, because I think it really did a huge impact in this country. We are the product of that free education, especially from the 844 system. So before we talk about the system in and of itself, let's talk about what the free education did in terms of classism, in terms of eradicating the issues that were brought about from the A-level system.
Well, I'll say 844 was a good idea because I remember growing up, we'd go to private schools at the beginning of like your kindergarten, then class 1 to let's say class 6. And then after that, your parent takes you to a public school because the government had made it possible. They gave children in public schools an advantage to go to good schools, good high schools. Because remember, ilikuwa ile theory ya ukifanya KCPE na public school na upite, high chances are utaenda shule poa.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. So I'll say 844 brought about a little bit of equality in that ungepata, okay, if you go to most national schools back in the day, ungepata in a class kuna mtoto ametoka Turkana, interior of Pokot, interior of Murang'a, interior of Kirinyaga. It really brought about equality, and like during the A levels. So I'll say 844 for me brought about equality, and the fact that it was also free education. Ilifanya at least every child in every home had at least a chance of getting somewhere. Yeah.
I think that's really powerful, because at the time with the A levels, you'd find so many parents. There's a boom of children in the workforce, in the labor force. Like tulikuwa nasikia kama story, watoto walikuwa wanachukuanga majani chai.
Child labor, yes.
Child labor was a thing at that time, because mom is like, I can't afford the school. So what are we gonna do? Twende wote niwafunze kazi, because this is how we're going to eat. And with free education, it brought about you that to a point when kama mtoto wako nyumbani during term, anyone could ask, mbona hauko shule? People used to ask. And then if your child says siko shule because mama yangu hajanipa, like, people look at you. There's a stigma.
Yes.
There's a stigma. Why is your child not in school and the government is giving a very subsidized amount. Like, what are you doing? You know, I think that's really brought about a mix. People, children who were from really poor families finally could interact with wealthy children. Yeah.
I think that's also an important aspect to note. Free primary education was introduced in the early 2000s during the Mwai Kibaki presidency,
Yeah.
and it is one of the highlights of the Mwai Kibaki presidency
For real.
because it reduced ignorance in the country.
Kabisa.
As we sit now, sisi watu wenye tulikuwa in the 844 system, almost 60% of our age group have finished up to form 4. Why? Because of that subsidized education. It became very easy to crack down on child labor, just as you mentioned, because school was free and school was everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people had, like, it gave people an opportunity to learn and to grow.
Yeah. Which is really amazing. But with it came also more cons. Do you think that 844 met the shortcomings of the A levels with things like Storia not being able to go to universities? Did it meet the shortcomings of it, or was it just another prolonged season of wafunike too much for now, until we are able to deal with it? Do you think it dealt with
I
it?
think 844 dealt with the issues that the A level system suffered from, which is the elitism and the widening gap between the wealthy and the poor in the post colonial era. It did that well. It gave people an opportunity to enter the job market because it was merit based, despite all its other issues, because it was merit based. It enabled people, it gave a lot of people from rags to riches stories, from zero to heroes stories. Ile yenye, it gave people a dream that if I go to school and I work hard, I'll get the opportunities that I'm looking for, that I'm dreaming of. I'll get those big 5 jobs.
Yeah, and
You
I'll have the
know.
Kenyan dream.
Mm.
You know the Kenyan dream. The Kenyan dream is to own a
Buy a
house,
shamba,
buy a
own
shamba huko Ushago, and then
own a
have 2 cars,
you know,
have a garage.
have some nice children who are also
Yeah.
going to private schools, you know.
The Kenyan dream.
So I think it broadened the Kenyan dream. It did come with its own many shortcomings,
Dealing with it soon.
but it covered the gaps that the
other
A level system had.
Yeah.
Okay, 844. You know when Lupita Nyong'o said dreams are valid, 844 brought that. It gave a child in the village the dream, like, kuna ule babu anakuanga lawyer, because you know that babu did A levels, right? So this child anona niko na free education, so meaning I can also be a lawyer. You see, so it gave every child a fighting chance, and that's the good thing about 844. It's also brought about kwa job market. We had a lot of watu wanajua, kitambo would be like there's only one lawyer per area, there's only one doctor, but 844 brought about, we had, but the job industry we had a lot of people coming in. We had doctors, we had lawyers. We also came to experience the fact that we can be more than just the big 5 jobs. You see, that's the good thing about 844. I'll say 844 brought about discipline, brought about the ability of that child who interior of, let's say, Lamu, and as a dream, naweza enda Nairobi niende UN na nikae chini na nisome.
Niende Nairobi.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like a far-fetched dream for them.
Yeah.
And then also when you come to think about 844 ilifanya pia, we got to recognize our own universities and give them the flowers they deserve. We didn't have to dream about going to Makerere, going to Julius Nyerere. At the end of the day, we'd be like, UN is good at medicine, so I want to go to UN. Let's say Kabarak is here, we have Egerton. 844 also brought about the delocalization of universities. We had universities coming right to your doorstep. So you didn't have to like travel to Nairobi. Sijui ati mchange pesa mtoto aende Nairobi kusoma and all that. Right now, someone can have a very valid degree from a university, let's say in Bomet. A university, I've seen they're opening a new university in Baringo. So is it Baringo? Yeah, Baringo. So I can say 844 really brought about the ability that even if someone is disabled, let's say people living with disabilities, you find they are more disadvantaged in seeking education far from home. You see, but now it gave them the hopes of like, yes, society ilikuwa imewapatia ile macho ya tena yo, but 844 ilifanya they can also have a fighting chance in this society. because 844 tuliona kulikuwa na special schools came about. So I can say 844 was a good thing.
Even beyond that, I think I started thinking about also what it did for the parents who are impoverished, because they didn't have to think about 3 meals for their children.
Yes.
Nutrition came about, that your child could be nourished in school, and all you have to think of is supper. Amachaya sakumi plus supper. That was it. And that really changed the dynamic for most parents who were in really hard situations, because now all they had to do was, okay, chentafe to your supper. As long as I have your supper, my kids are sorted. Yeah, I think that was a really good thing. So let's go to the cons of what 844 brought. I think the cons are obvious and they are big. So let's address them. What are some of the cons? What are some of the downside of this system that looked really good in the beginning, the early 2000s, but by the time we are here a generation later, we're able to look back and be like, hey, hindsight is okay, but yeah.
I think for me, it's the obsession with merit. Yeah.
Yeah.
In class 8, you must get 400 and above. And that really impacts the way teachers teach you.
400.
You know, especially when you pair the obsession with merit plus, even if eventually it was made illegal, but capital punishment in schools, even if it was eventually made illegal, and even though it was difficult to enforce it in schools, but we saw that for the time that it was legal to beat children in schools, children are being beaten to get those grades. Children are being beaten to get those marks.
Even the stigma of at you come out, you're a slow student, you're paired with a really smart student. Like it would wear off on me through osmosis. Like no. Yeah, najisomea hadi home. And then it became a whole craze with national exams. The way I remember when I finally got to class 6, now everybody's like, unajua uko upper primary, upper primary, upper primary. Yes. That song was sung so much. Baka tunaambiwa tusilale. Ukilala sahi, you know, it was bad.
And then I think also another aspect of the obsession with grades is the projected future poverty, for lack of a better way to put it. Unaambiwa, if you don't study hard, if you don't achieve merit the way merit is measured in schools, because I think that's also another aspect, that success is different for different people, and talent doesn't automatically equate to academic success. But academic success was prioritized. So you are told, if you don't pass, if you don't follow these steps, you won't achieve not just the Kenyan dream, but you won't be able to lift yourself out of
You'll
poverty.
amount to nothing.
Yes, you'll amount to nothing. So I think that's one aspect of the 844 system that was difficult for me. And then I think also a big aspect for me is the disregard for mental health struggles due to the focus on academics. Like, you cannot be okay. Even if you are not okay, you have to study, you have to be perfect. There's an expectation of perfection. And then also, if you are academically gifted, the pressure is insane. And then I think also, once you shift, when you look at the two key exams in the 844 system, exam year class 8 and exam year form 4. So in class 8, there's the pressure to do well because the slots in the schools that have a higher chance of passing KCSE are few. So you push, you get into that school. Now you're a big fish in a big pond. You're umetapatapa, you're new, and it's damaging for your mental health and your self-esteem. Especially at that time, you're a teenager. Developmentally, it's difficult for you. And then you get to form 4 and the pressure is mounting. Syllabus inakimbishwa. Mnapewa stress. You're sleeping late, you're waking up early. Extracurriculars, sometimes some schools do away with. I think also that's another fact. If there's some schools that did away with extracurriculars or prevented senior classes from attending extracurriculars because you have to focus on the exam and pass.
I also think it really damaged the family structure, because now parents also merited their children's worth through their education. That I remember when I was in school, because I'm South Sudanese and speaking from a foreign perspective, I remember Kenyan children were always worried about what their fathers would think about their grades because their father's love and their father's approval and worth really depended on their grades. And that ruined the family structure completely. So now you have children who home is not a safe space, school is not a safe space. What are they doing with their mentor? Where are they ever going to be safe? Hey, tough, tough.
Well, when you talk about the cons that came about with the 844, as a creative, I'll say for students who are not, who are creative but are not class smart, they really, really, really got it hard because because ulikuwa unapata not every school was active na story extra curriculum. Some schools didn't have drama, some schools didn't have music, some schools were just straight up merit based, like we just want results and that's it. Most private schools. So ulikuwa unakuja unapata like before, okay, like if you're a creative, right? I remember in high school, and first and foremost, I want to say big shout out to those chores because
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
like ulikuwa unapata unatolewa kwa list. You see the way they say unajukishwa kwa basi before,
Bana.
right?
Discuss.
So
Humiliation, it was a humiliation
Ritual.
ritual.
No, for real. It
Yeah.
was.
so ulikuwa unapata when unashukishwa kwa basi, sisi we had a rule. Like there's a certain grade. Kama haufiki your grade, you wouldn't.
Get on the bus. That's horrible. That's horrific. Hey, poleni guys, poleni. Mimi kwanza, I was really good public speaking since I was young. And so for the longest time, my school didn't have any public speaking representatives. So I was the only one. So me, my ticket in the bus was always tick.
Speaking. Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm the only one. I'm wasn't talking about bus. I don't come fail. I'm on bus. Anyway, so 844 did fail. The merit based. Also, I think it's in Makao Mutua's article on Daily Nation. I talked about that it created a system of non-readers, just crammers. So now most of people in our generation, there was this now new tone of I don't like to read. I don't like to read. Why? Because it came with a very traumatic. Reading was brutal.
Yeah, it was brutalized.
It was
yes.
taxing, so that people didn't find any enjoyment in reading. So now the only time you open a book is to cram what is inside until you are able to pass that class, and then you are over it. Yeah. So it created also it created mental health issues for an entire generation. It created the gap still remained because in as much as we're going to school and everything, now came the elitists who were once going to Form 5 and Form 6, taking their children now abroad.
Yes.
It was during that era they're like, my children are not mixing with these ones. I need my children to learn Igbo, how to eat from the outside going in, and all of those things. So now people started looking also towards maybe if I pass, I go to Australia. If I pass, I go to
the US.
Everyone in Eldoret is going to Australia. It became a thing also going abroad. So now let's talk about the transitioning to a new system, because we see the failures is it was very merit based, and the merit based was not good for anyone because it also produced an entire generation of cheaters. Because now the national exam was
Cha muhimu ni
everything.
kupita mtihani.
Bora upite. Mwakenya was our best friends. Everyone. I remember somebody said on Twitter that at least us when we were cheating, because we didn't want to let our parents down. We were thinking about our parents the whole time. So at least we have some integrity. But it did create a generation of people who were stealing. So that now you take somebody, they pass the exams, they get their A's, they get everything that they need, and then they go into another field and they're incapable of it. My friend, she was in School of Dentistry. She says when they joined School of Dentistry, there are about 70 people who joined School of Dentistry. They graduated only 6 of them because everyone else dropped out because they were unable to keep up with the rigor of it. And you're like, but you got an A. So now also them who have dropped out also have to deal with the mental
the
turmoil
shame.
and the shame and the stigmatization of you are once smart, nini ilikufanyikia, ni pombe, ni hiyo bangi, ni hiyo ulienda Nairobi ukaharibika, kumbe alikuwa mwizi tu shule. Yeah.
Okay, I'll say this about the 844. Pardon. Apart from the creative part of them limiting students who are creative. I'll say, as she had said, about the mental health, okay, and the family aspects. When you merge the two of them together, when you look at the Gen Zs and the millennials, most of us, unapata mtu analia, oh, niko na papers and I've not been employed, because 844 didn't teach us that we can be entrepreneurs. 844 didn't teach us that we can actually use our creative skills to go and start a business, to maybe open vitu kama podcast zimekuja juzi. Let's say matters like social media, digital marketing. Right now, if you tell your parents, I'm a digital marketer, atakueleza unchizi
I
nini?
told my father I'm
What
an
do you mean?
activist. Akaniambia hiyo
Yeah.
si kazi.
Right? Right? And you're trying to tell them they're like gonna do. You get it?
Yeah.
The world is evolving. AI is here. Technology is the new norm. But our parents are still fixated in
Top five.
lazima ukue daktari, lazima ukue na hiyo karatasi yako.
Yeah.
And that is why you find a lot of people like, my parents and I are not talking, my
Yeah.
parents are toxic and all that.
Broke down family.
Exactly, broke down families. And the one thing I'd say is that I feel like our parents really need to understand the fact that time is moving.
Yeah.
We are evolving also as a generation. As century pia inasonga inaenda.
Yeah.
We are no longer zile enzi za you only have to be a doctor
Yeah.
to make it in life. Yes, it is like a good, it's a good cause and it's respectable and all that. But 844 ilifanya we didn't cultivate the nature of welcoming new ideas
Yeah.
that bring about money. You see, and then also this thing whereby 844 ilifanya walimu at Shout, I remember we used to have a certain teacher of chemistry. This madam would ask you the occupation of your parents. Yeah. So this one time, this story was like, didn't have a pencil in the lab. This teacher told this lady, guy, kwani watu wa kanisa ya wazazi wako kutoa sadaka?
Or do her
Because the
father as a
parents,
pastor?
yeah. You see, so teachers would actually just tell
Cheat.
you things exactly, and they'd also favor students who are performing. I know of people wenye tulikuwa nao high school and they are not okay till date because a certain teacher alisema you're not going to be anyone in the society because you can't get an A in chemistry, you can't get an A in biology, so you're a nobody in the society.
Yeah.
But knowing these people like on a personal level, you know how skilled these people are, and you find their confidence, their self-esteem has been toned down because a certain teacher said 1 2 3 and 1 2 3. I think that's the one thing about 844. 844 really demoralized a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really broke down every structure that's supposed to be holding up the fragments of society, because teachers are supposed to be people who speak life into you, but then it's them who are demonizing. Hadi, during academic days, it was a horrible time for students because it's where your teacher and your parent gang up against you. And you become
umetagtimiwa na mateso.
Hey, it was such a bad experience. When it's supposed to be time to reevaluate on how they can help you, they're making it so. Yani mimi nilikuwa naonanga tu, I don't even want to invite my parents. And so mwalimu anasema, if your parents don't come, you're not coming to school tomorrow. Hey, so no. Anyway, let's get into CBC or CBET.
You cannot talk about the transition from 844 to CBC without talking about the Kenyan job market.
Let's talk about the Kenyan job market.
One of the benefits, but also the disadvantages of the 844 system is that it flooded the job market with professionals.
Yeah.
As much as we can say that some people cheated in 844 or
But
they were unable to but they have the papers, we can't also discount the fact that watu wa 844 wamesoma.
Yeah.
Na wamesoma kwa nguvu.
Yeah. So many of them.
So people know their shit. People are well versed with what they're doing. They're intelligent. They're empowered.
Like
they have those papers, but they don't have the jobs.
Yeah.
And so the government, maybe I think that the transition from 844 to CBC is not an educational problem. It's an economic problem. Yeah, because our economy is not robust, or has not grown enough for all of the professionals who have exploded into the market to be absorbed into the jobs that they were told that they were going to be given. The way you've mentioned that watu wameenda shule, they're intelligent, they're well versed, but because of the way people are viewing the kind of jobs that you're allowed to have, it's difficult for people to diversify into entrepreneurship. I think that's also another failing of the 844 system, is that it became so difficult for people to be able to think about a different way of doing what you have been trained to do.
Yeah.
Nobody tells you that now that you have a law degree, you don't just have to be a lawyer,
A criminal lawyer, especially.
yeah, a criminal lawyer, or you don't have to deal with family court. You can do a lot of different things. You can go ahead and do regulatory compliance. You can do consultancies. You can advise NGOs. People give you the papers and they give you the knowledge, but they don't tell you what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's an advantage that has come with CBC, that they show you what you can do with the knowledge that you have.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. What is CBC and what is its projected impact? Molly, please take us through this.
Okay, CBC, it's competency-based curriculum. So CBC, when it was, the idea was given birth by Uhuru's government, right? And it came to be, the conversation started hitting the airwaves in 2017. Then in 2019, it got implemented. The problem, though, is there wasn't the public participation needed for this new education model to be implemented. And it's an amazing model. If you really do a background check on CBC, it'll actually bring about a generation that, like, they can think critically, they can find a solution where there's like absolutely like yo hapa kuna, their way out. That is the type of generation that CBC was aiming to bring into the world, you see. But the problem is that implementation ndo kidogo imekuwa na ish.
Kizungumkuti.
Yes, but CBC itself as a concept, it's an amazing curriculum. The same way 844, kitambo during 844, it was either you getting that A, ilikuwa kupata above 350 unaweza enda shule ya maana. Because I remember growing up, we were told shule unaitwa ndio unaenda.
Yeah.
You see. So, and everyone was aiming to go to a good school. I want to go to Alliance. I want to go to, you see. And those people who are in Alliance can also give you their own tales of, yeah, what I see, right? There's this pressure that comes with going to a national school. You have to fit a certain box. You see, 844 used to place people in boxes. But CBC gives students the ability to actually,
Create
feed into your skills.
Yeah.
Mtoto akigrow, CBC seme ako grade 2, right? So this is your kid or your brother. You can actually attest to the fact that ako good in agriculture. For example, my youngest brother is the CBC student. When I was in grade 5, because he's in grade 5, he's in grade 6. What the story is, it happened when he was in grade 5. So when I was in grade 5, mimi nataka kuwatch Nickelodeon, soap, alafu nisome ka science, nifanye ka English, and that's it. But for him, he has his own gumboots. He has a whole attire ya kwenda kwa shamba. When mzai is like doing to vitu kwa shamba, my brother is hapo. Ati si tuliambiwa ufanye hivi. You see, it's bridging the father-son relationship. The same to daughters. So the parents are actually hands-on in the children's education. Unlike 844, unauliza madhe kitu swali ya social studies na kuangalia hizi ndio gani
County.
exactly. So I can say CBC has, if it's well implemented, it's going to have a very, very big impact.
So, but we see in the air this talk of that it's not something good, and that's where the cons come in, because you see on paper something really nice, like the way you're describing, something that would really revolutionize our education system and really help an entire new generation think beyond those boxes and create a new reality for themselves. But then there's something sinister happening in the background, something nefarious is happening in the background, which is something that I think we need to explore and bring. I think that's where people get the most confusion. So what are some of these things that people are seeing that is becoming a problem?
I think for me, as a critique from the sidelines of CBC, the nefarious thing that I am seeing about CBC is that it's not contextualized to the African context, and particularly to the Kenyan context and the Kenyan economic context. Yeah. For CBC to be correctly and accurately implemented, we cannot ignore the structural inequalities of this country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like schools in particular counties and schools in particular are not the same. Yeah. The structure, the system, the teachers, everything about it is different.
Yeah. So I think the problem from CBC has a fair amount of problems, but one of them is lack of training and implementation, particularly with the teachers. The people who are being given these opportunities, or people who are expected to have these opportunities, the transition from CBC, from 844 to CBC, was very sharp. We talked
It was
about it for a while,
rushed.
but it was rushed. So walimu hawakupata training. Mtu mwenye, someone who, like, teachers in this country are university educated, and for them, as a teacher, maybe you can enlighten us more on this, but see, you were taught how to approach the 844 curriculum. It required extensive training, sindio. But for the CBC curriculum, which is brand new in this country, never been seen before, never been done before, there was insufficient training. A survey was done, and only 3% of teachers feel adequately prepared to implement CBC. And then CBC also places a burden on parents to outsource the materials.
Yeah.
Unaambiwa mtoto ameambiwa leo waende walete a whole chicken, leo wanachinja kuku na kupika kuku. Now, if you are a financially challenged parent, that puts your kid on the offside, because utatafuta wapi pesa ya kununua kuku.
Because like a yarn. Every day when I know a yarn. Every day when I know
hey! So the materials, like, I feel like it has removed government responsibility in providing materials for children to learn. And then I think you also cannot talk about CBC with the imminent collapse of free education.
Yes.
So I feel like it will act as an avenue to widen the gap between the rich and the poor, because for private schools, for wealthy schools, CBC has been implemented and implemented well.
Really well. How do I understand?
But for
robotics.
all of us in shule zetu za in the bundus, the children are seeing dust.
And
and I fear for the humanities. I fear for the future of the humanities, because I feel like sometimes CBC can be very STEM centered, the sciences centered. You are taught the what and the how before you are taught the history, the why. What that, like, I think maybe that's also something that we can address.
Yeah.
Okay. The disadvantages of CBC. I'm trying to get them
lined up.
Vizuri.
Yeah.
Yes.
Please.
I'll say first, as you said, it was implemented way too fast. I feel it was more of like a project for the government. The same way they built the expressway. They're trying to say, you see, tumefanya education.
Yeah.
You see.
It's a model, not a system.
Exactly. So I'll say CBC was more of like an accolade for some sorts.
Individuals, yeah.
Exactly. And then if that is not it, also the teachers were not well trained, because CBC ilikuwa implemented while I was joining campus. Our curriculum, our syllabus in campus, education-wise, it was basically 844. So meaning, mtu kama mimi, if I have to go and teach a JSS school, I'll have to go and take another undergraduate course on CBC.
Crazy.
Right? And then if that is not it, the teachers who are already in the system also had to go back and get trained again. There is no time for them to be trained, because
the school system
is still up and running. The only time they have is over the holidays, and that is not adequate enough for them to get the right skills to actually come to class and teach.
Whole new system.
Exactly. We've had problems whereby schools didn't have a teacher of this and this, or a teacher of this and this. You see, and then that is not it. When mwalimu mwenye amefanya degree, right, anaenda kufunza secondary school, and then JSS, the junior secondary school, ni grade 7 to grade
9.
Exactly. So unapata this teacher is equipped to teach adolescent children 14, 15, 16, 17 to 18. Sasa anaenda kufunza mtoto mwenye ako 11 years, 12 years. You see, the psychology is different.
Yeah.
You see,
the development stage is different.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll say CBC, however much, is a good thing. It was implemented way too fast. They didn't do a background check. They didn't prepare the teachers adequately. They didn't prepare the students adequately. And then if that is not it, there's this thing of umesema wazazi wanaambiwa bring leta kuku, leta sijui nini, leta nini. The government should have been financially, like, fully to
responsible
exactly to fully sponsor the CBC. And this is the reason why I'm saying they should fully sponsor CBC, because hii shule inatuma mtoto alete kuku, ile shule ingine wanatuma na kitu different. So you see there's a contradiction in the syllabus, in how these schools are approaching various
the children.
exactly. So si kama si kitambo tungeka chini to discuss science, you come from a different school. Exactly.
Tunaulizana saya funky. Mmefika wapi?
Yeah.
Mmefika wapi bio?
Yeah, so I'll say most schools that have benefited from CBC ni private schools or international schools. Hawa ni watoto wenye wako na swimming kwa syllabus. Kuna music, you see, kwa curriculum ya CBC kuna music.
Clarinet.
Exactly. Unauliza mtoto mshaifunza music, ati walisema tisha music ataletwa next term. Mtoto mwenye ako kwa a private school or an international school, ya mtoto anajua kucheza flute, anajua kucheza guitar.
Baka kuna tuition classes during the holiday.
Exactly. So it's so unfair to that child in the rural area. So I'll say CBC only favors mostly
Wealthy.
private schools. Yeah, the wealthy. But watoto wenye wako government schools, they are really, really losing it. And then some schools go for swimming. It's part of the curriculum. Shule zingine, they tell parents, sasa unajua shule yetu ni huku kijiji. Ikifika kitu kwa wiki, maybe wanaenda once, or in a month they go like twice. See, that's not fair. You're giving an unfair advantage to these children. Because wakiingia kwa job market, yes, they were in the same education model, but there's a whole...
Like, I wasn't exposed enough to be competent in this.
Exactly. So however much CBC is a good idea, I'll say the government kidogo pale didn't prepare the nation well enough to integrate CBC into the system.
Yeah. I think when we started, you said something really important, that you feel like it's an economic structure, it's an economic issue. It's not even about just educating, it's beyond that. And I think that should be part of our part too.
Yeah.
Now, dealing with what is actually behind the curtain, because what we have talked about is an evolution. We're talking about the changes, what it is meeting. Has it met the needs of, because from what we're discussing, CBC has not particularly met every single shortcoming of the 844 system. It has met the merit-based one perfectly.
Only.
Yeah, and they've gone above and beyond on that competence one. But one of the issues that we struggled with was infrastructure. Like, what do you mean watoto wa Moyalo wanasoma chini ya mti? You know, still to this date, what do you mean? And these are pain for taxpayers, because they're just like, you are taking our money in the millions, in the billions, and you're giving it to the education sector. But clearly, the children are still greatly disadvantaged, and the parents are even suffering more, because now they have to also reach.
And then, you know, it's difficult to talk about that without talking about how even in this budget that has been recently passed, there has been a significant cut to the amount of money that has been allocated to the education system. Yeah, that was number one. Number two, I feel like CBC runs the risks for inviting entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of material that is necessary to run the CBC.
Yes.
CBC has a lot of moving parts. So the technology, the books, the curriculum itself, the syllabus, it's difficult for the systems to run without people being given tenders.
So I think we need a part two. We'll be back with the exact same guests, where we talk about now what I'm talking about behind the curtains, the entrepreneurship. Is it creating a system where people are just going out to be employees and not necessarily thinking about being the employer? Are we shifting the Kenyan dream to not just being reaching for the highest levels of success, or just to be workers in the workforce? Just a bunch of robots, you know what you're talking about. So we'll do that in the second part of this episode, because I think there's so much more to discuss, because at the heart of it is our children, our future generations, our siblings. What are they going to find? And that's really important. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining. This was such a educative. What we are giving you, creme de la creme. You can call us A levels. You can call us Makerere, honestly, at this point. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions about what you want us to discuss in the part two, please feel free. If you haven't understood anything that we have discussed here, also feel free. We'll be very, very willing to address them in part two, or we could address them in the comments if it's something that you could quickly address. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, share it to every single person you think will benefit from this. Have a wonderful day. Bye. Our audience. Unaongea mingi mpaka napotea, naanza kusikiza huku. Hey. Sijui mnaongea. Hey. Hey. You know CBC.